All right, can you guys hear me okay? So I'm Gibbs Knotts. Thanks for being here. I'm political science professor and dean of humanities and social sciences. Good to see some of my students here. Thank you very much for being here. So as you probably know, the Bully Pulpit Series has been going on since 2008, and we invite all presidential candidates to come to South Carolina. Jordan, why do they come to South Carolina? Because it's the first in the South primary. For the Democrats, it's now probably going to be first in the nation. We'll figure out, we're going to fight it out with New Hampshire. But it is the first primary in the South for the Republicans, that's for sure. And so we've had all candidates come here, and I'm super excited about our guests today. Kind of the format's going to be is Lily Taylor, student body president, is going to come up and introduce Cenk Uygur, and then he's going to make about a 10 to 15 minute speech talking about kind of his candidacy and talk about the Constitution a little bit. And then I'm going to ask him a few questions. We're going to shift over here for a little more conversation style. And then I want to make sure so somebody jump up and grab me if we're still talking past about 4:30. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for everybody in this room to ask a question. So be thinking about what you want to ask a presidential candidate. So that's kind of the format. I guess I'm going to turn things over to Lily. Lily, coming up. I think we should give Lily
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the College of Charleston. My name is Lily Taylor, and I have the honor of serving as the college's student body president and the privilege to introduce today's Bully Pulpit esteemed guest. In October 2023, Cenk Uygur announced his intentions of running in the 2024 Democratic Party presidential primaries. Cenk is a unique candidate because he was born in Turkey and he immigrated to the United States at age 8. Then he was raised in New Jersey and later graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in management. Uygur wears many hats, as he is both the founder and CEO of TYT and the host of The Young Turks. This is not only the world's largest and longest running daily online news show, but it serves as a popular and progressive news source for younger generations. He is also the co-founder of the Justice Democrats, which advocates for leaders that have bold, progressive solutions. Additionally, he is the author of the newly released manifesto, Justice is Coming, which discusses the progressive momentum in America that is already transforming Washington, D.C., and how people can rally around this idea. Uygur has become a prominent voice in the realm of media, political analysis, and social advocacy, and has helped foster critical conversations on topics that impact each and every one of us. Let us embrace this special opportunity to learn from his insights and open the floor to a meaningful conversation. With all this in mind, please help me welcome presidential candidate Cenk Uygur.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I'm not going to give you a normal speech about the campaign. I'm going to tell you about something in specific. Okay. So unfortunately today I come to you to talk about an insidious form of discrimination that the Democratic Party leadership and the DNC is practicing. It is discrimination against naturalized citizens. So in order to understand the discrimination, which I'll come back to and give you the details of, you have to understand our perspective as naturalized citizens. Now, most people aren't, of course. It's a country of 330 million people. Naturalized citizens are 25 million Americans. So if you're not one of us, you probably have never even thought about this issue, and I don't blame you for that. It's outside of your experience. And the idea that we can't run for president seems normal to everyone and not that big a deal. Why does this seem normal? Because we all learned it in 8th grade in civics class. It was one of the few things that sticks in your mind about the presidency. Oh, yeah, you've got to be born here, right? And if you're not a naturalized citizen, you don't think that that's that big a deal in terms of discrimination. Most folks aren't going to run for president anyway, right? But from our perspective, it's very different. So our parents came here because they love this country. And think about that for a second. Imagine uprooting where you were from Imagine your house, your cousins, your family, your friends, and saying, I'm going to leave here because I love another country so much that I want to go and live there. I believe in that country. I have hope in that country, and I believe that's where the dream is, the American dream. And I want my kids to be able to live that dream. So all of our parents did that. And I want to thank all the immigrant parents out there. You have no idea how hard they worked, and I can't ever thank them enough. And they sacrificed everything for us to have a shot at the American dream. And they followed all the rules. You know, for naturalized citizens, almost all of us are documented. We came in, we did everything right, or at least our parents did everything right, and they brought us to this country. And what is the first thing that I was greeted with when I was an 8-year-old kid that had moved to East Brunswick, New Jersey? When I say I'm from Turkey, the first thing I'd hear is, ha ha, you can't be president. Now, it's a tiny thing again, especially if you're not on the receiving end of it. You happen to see that in a school somewhere, you think like, what's the big deal? So what? You know, what if I said, you can't be a dentist? So then be something else, right? But that's not what we hear. What we hear is, you're not really one of us. You're not really a full citizen. You're not really fully American. And in fact, there was actually a good example of this just yesterday. I was on C-SPAN, Washington Journal, and one of the callers called in angry. And he said, you're not allowed to run. You're not even a citizen. So a lot of you here today are educated, and you know that that's not the case. We are citizens. But for a lot of people in America, they don't even think we're citizens. Just based on that one thing that's in the original Constitution that says you have to be naturally born. So, no, we are citizens. In fact, the Supreme Court ruled in Schneider v. Rusk that naturalized citizens have to be treated exactly the same, that we cannot be treated as second-class citizens. Here, I'm going to give you actually a quote from that decision. It said, this statute proceeds on the impermissible assumption that naturalized citizens as a class are less reliable and bear less allegiance to this country than do the native born. This is an assumption that is impossible for us to make. The Supreme Court has already said it is impossible to distinguish between naturalized citizens and natural-born citizens. They said you cannot treat us as second-class citizens. Why are we still having this conversation? So I'm going to get more into the law in a second. But look, guys, I want you to understand from an emotional level and a personal level that I barely remember growing up in Turkey. I was 8 when I came. But I remember loving the Pittsburgh Steelers. I remember loving Jersey subs and pepperoni pizza with extra cheese. I remember loving playing on the softball field in Milltown and then grabbing ice cream nearby. I grew up as an American, in American culture, with an American identity. And at every turn, and especially in this run, I've been met with the same discrimination. You can't run. You're not one of us. You can't lead us. If you say to someone, you can't lead us, what you're saying is, we don't really trust you. You're not really one of us. And so, look, I'll give you a couple more examples real quick. Ted Lieu is a United States congressman. He actually happens to be my congressman. And he was born in Taiwan and came over when he was 3 years old. Doesn't remember Taiwan at all growing up, at all, not one thing. He grew up in Cleveland. He's from Cleveland. He became a United States colonel in the Air Force. Okay, he's a colonel. He risks his life for the country, but he's not allowed to lead us. Patrick Bet-David's a right-winger. I don't agree with him on politics. I was on his podcast and I found out he's an Armenian Christian that was in Iran, that was born in Iran. In 1978, they run from Iran during the revolution, fearing for their safety and their life, and they come to this great haven, the United States of America. Couldn't be more proud to be an American, winds up serving the 101st Airborne. Risks his life for this country, and then we say, no, you're not really one of us. 700 Medal of Honor winners were naturalized citizens. So they're willing to risk their lives. They're willing to do everything for this country. But at every turn, what all of us hear is, you're not really one of us. You're not really 100% American. You're not really a citizen. And so that is unquestionably a form of discrimination. And so our parents and us, we love this country. And that's why we came here. And what we're asking for is for you to love us back. I don't think it's too much of an ask. But unfortunately, a lot of people have treated it that way. And so I'm going to get to the Democratic Party in a second. But look, I want to address this real quick as to the logical, moral, and legal reasons why we should be allowed to run for president. First of all, logically, the Founding Fathers were very clear as to why they put that in the original Constitution. They were worried about an Austro-Hungarian prince coming into the country and hijacking our democracy. Are you guys worried that we're any Austro-Hungarian princes out here? This is an anachronism. Everyone knows, and from left wing to the right wing, whatever show I go on, they all say, well, obviously it's ridiculous. Obviously that shouldn't matter at all anymore. Nobody's going to co-opt America into the Prussian Empire that no longer exists. So it was an anachronism. So logically, it makes no sense. And Orrin Hatch, a Republican senator, said, this restriction has become an anachronism that is decidedly un-American. Consistent with our democratic form of government, our citizens should have every opportunity to choose their leaders free of unreasonable limitations. So it's not just about us, it's about you guys. Do you get to vote for the person that you want, or are you blocked by this anachronism? A thing that doesn't even exist anymore, which is what I'll get to in a second. But morally, any form of discrimination is a cancer. It doesn't just affect the person being discriminated against, it also affects the person doing the discrimination. It makes you an advocate of blocking other people's progress. It makes you an advocate of excluding people. And especially the Democratic Party should not be in favor of that. So I think that these are fairly clear. So let's go to the legal angle. People will say, and it's the number one thing I've gotten since I started this campaign, it's right there in the Constitution, man. It says it. Well, wait a minute. It also says in the Constitution that black folks are 3/5 of a person, should be counted as 3/5 of a person. Does pointing to that part of the Constitution make any sense at all? No, of course not. It was amended out by the 14th Amendment. We have a lot of things in the original Constitution and even in the amendments that have been amended out. For example, in the original Constitution, you all were not allowed to vote for senators. The state legislatures would pick the senators. So if you go to vote for the Senate right now and somebody comes to you and goes, no way, man, you're not allowed to vote. The state legislature picks. It's right in the Constitution. Well, yeah, it's in the original Constitution, but it was amended out. Do you not understand the concept of amendments? And and it's very frustrating. And I get it when the right wing does it. I get it when the Republican Party does it. But when you see Democratic officials saying, no, we should keep the discriminatory parts of the Constitution, that is crazy. It's totally nuts. It's not at all true. So what does the 14th Amendment say? It's almost like a Da Vinci Code. You can't believe you didn't see it before. Partly because, it's not your job to look at the 14th Amendment and analyze it, but it's actually very, very clear. It says all persons born or naturalized have due process and equal protection of the laws. They didn't say naturalized by accident. They put naturalized in the amendment. And they didn't say, well, we don't really mean equal. We mean equal for everyone except the naturalized citizens, except we mentioned naturalized. No, they meant equal and they meant naturalized. That's why it's in the Constitution. The plain meaning of the 14th Amendment is super clear. All persons born or naturalized have equal protection. That includes every right, not just some rights. So yes, it has already been amended out of the Constitution. And that is partly what I'm trying to discuss here and bring to attention and speak on behalf of those 25 million Americans. Finally, we get to the Democratic Party. We found out in Arkansas that the DNC is calling state party leaders and telling them to keep me off the ballots. Now, we know in Arkansas, and very likely they did it here in South Carolina as well. So we were kept off the ballot in South Carolina because the Democratic Party, not voters, not the courts, the Democratic Party said, we want to discriminate against this guy. We want to discriminate against 25 million naturalized citizens. We don't think that they're equal to us. How dare they think about leading this country? They're not fully Americans. They're not real citizens. That's the Democratic Party saying that. So Jamie Harrison's the head of the DNC. He's here from South Carolina. If anyone tried to discriminate against Jamie Harrison, for all my disagreements with him, I think he's a corporate Democrat. I think he's establishment. I think he's status quo. I don't agree with him on policies. But if someone tried to discriminate against Jamie Harrison, I would go to war on his behalf. I would fight that discrimination with every fiber of my being. But Jamie Harrison has decided that power is more important. And guys, why do you think anybody does discrimination? They do it to protect their own power. So here's Jamie Harrison and Joe Biden saying, who cares about 25 million Americans? We're going to actively call up state parties and tell them, discriminate, exclude them. The Democratic Party is in favor of exclusion. We don't want them to have full rights. We don't care what the Supreme Court said. We don't care what the 14th Amendment said. Discriminate. That is not what the Democratic Party should be about. And that is not what America's about. I think it is deeply disappointing. I think that Jamie Harrison should be embarrassed of himself for doing that. And it's a shame upon the Democratic Party. So look, last thing that I'll ask of you guys is, well, okay, what is it that I'm asking, right? So first of all, the South Carolina Democrats, we followed all the rules. We filled out the right forms. By the way, we gave $20,000, and that's $20,000 coming from 6,800 different donors at average of $34. They took the money, by the way, and they said, you're not on the ballot. That's basically stealing from little grandmas and American citizens out there going, oh, yeah, you gave to this guy because against all odds, you want him to represent you and be your voice? Ha ha, we're going to take the money. We're going to take their money and we're going to keep you off the ballot. Is that what the Democratic Party stands for in South Carolina? So I have a very simple request. I followed every rule there was, and the courts are going to decide this issue anyway. Put me on the ballot. One more thing that's important about that. Guys, the courts also look to see how people voted. There's a thing called the political question doctrine, where they say if the voters have decided in a certain direction, we're going to listen to the will of the voters. But I cannot get to the will of the voters if the Democratic Party is the one doing the discrimination, if the Democratic Party is the one blocking me. So I have that same request of the DNC. Can you please stop actively asking the state parties to discriminate against 25 million Americans? Can you please be on the side of righteousness and justice instead of on the side of exclusion and discrimination? It's not too much of an ask. FEC has already ruled that naturalized citizens can run for president. Whether we are eligible to serve as president is for the courts. So let the courts do their job and let the voters decide if they think I should be their leader. And that will affect the courts. I don't mind losing in the courts. That's okay. I believe in this system. I believe in our justice system. I'm going to take it to the courts. We have a great case, and we're likely to win the case. And I don't mind losing in the case of the voters. If the voters say, hey, Cenk, I hear what you're saying, but I like Joe Biden. I like my presidents who take naps, whatever, right? I like guys who are status quo, and I know he's not going to give me any radical change. He's not going to give me big change. He's going to give me tiny, tiny, tiny change, and I like that. And I like that he takes the corporate donations and then does whatever his donors say. Good. Okay, then the voters decided. That's how democracy works, okay? Hey, I like that he's at 37%, and he's almost definitely going to lose to Donald Trump. I like that, okay? Then that's your call, okay? I believe in democracy. I believe in this system, but let the voters decide. And for the voters, my ask of you is this. One is, put this issue out of your mind. The courts are going to decide it no matter what. So just vote on the person you want, the person who's going to fight for you. God, wouldn't it be amazing to have a Democratic politician who actually wants to pass the bills, that you don't have to push and convince and plead and beg with, oh my God, President Biden, can you please do paid family leave? No, you don't need to ask me. That's why I'm here, because I need to pass the bills. I'm going to fight for you. But finally, the thing that I want most from the voters is to treat me like a real American. That's why we came here. We came here to be Americans and because we believe in this country and we love this country. So I think it's the bare minimum ask. I hope it's the bare minimum ask. And so when you go to vote, that's my only ask of you. Treat me as if I'm one of you and I belong. Thank you.
They're on. All right, so I'll ask a couple of questions and then we'll get to you guys' questions. So be thinking about what you'd like to ask. So we're on a college campus. You've gone to some impressive colleges, UPenn and Columbia. Do I have that right? I think that's right. How's your education shaped your career and informed kind of how you're going to run here in 2024?
The media guy forgetting the mic. That was funny. So look, I went and studied entrepreneurial management and political science at Penn. Those were my two concentrations. I was at Wharton undergrad, so that's the business school. And it was last year that they allowed a political science concentration. But people asked me back then, what are you doing? Like, who's going to hire you out of business school for political science or entrepreneurial management? Then go be an entrepreneur, right? So people thought, in terms of concentrations, especially at Wharton, that it was a particularly useless two concentrations to have. And then what did I wind up doing? Setting up my own business about political science. So it was my instincts that led me to those concentrations. They call them concentration instead of major at Penn. And it turned out, yeah, that's because that's what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I learned from the accounting classes and the finance classes and labor management and all those different things that I took. But I remember one professor in particular who was an actual entrepreneur in Philadelphia, and he would come in and he would tell us these stories. And he told the story of how to raise money for your company. And we put up about 40, 50 things, options on the blackboard. He eliminated every one of them. And at the end, circled family and friends and said, if you don't have the, let's say, intestinal fortitude to ask your family and friends for money, you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur. Go get a job. And that really stuck with me. And the hardest thing I've ever done is not running for president. It's asking my parents, who already sacrificed so much for me, and my friends, hey, can you give me money to start my own business? That was brutal. But that professor kept ringing in my ear. Do you have the fortitude or don't you? If you don't, go get a job. And so that's what led me to starting Young Turks. And from law school, everybody at Columbia took corporate law. And I took corporate law for about 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, I hate this. I can't stand this class. And I'm definitely not going to be a corporate lawyer. So I dropped it, and I went and took yet another constitutional law class. I took about almost half the classes I took were in constitutional law. And in one of those, I read the 14th Amendment. And I remember talking to my constitutional law professor at Columbia and saying, it says born or naturalized, so we're good with this, right? And he's like, no one's ever made that case, and that's pretty compelling. I don't know why no one's ever made it, but you're not wrong. It does say born or naturalized, and it does say equal.
So obviously you're here on a college campus, and we appreciate that. And obviously, I think it also speaks to your interest in connecting with millennials and Gen Z voters. And so I guess my question is, how does your interest in the college student population impact your campaign, your policy positions, and how might it affect the way you would govern as president?
Yeah, so unlike almost all other politicians, I think young people are right. So what you'll hear in media and politics a lot is, these young people, they don't understand. They're lazy. And Biden answered a similar answer to this back in 2020 election. And he said, listen, you guys don't know how hard we had it, okay? And I don't want to deal with your malarkey or something along those lines. No, brother, that's not remotely true. You got elected as senator when you were like 29. It was incredibly easy. And back then, people bought houses for like $35,000. Now, if you're living in a major city like LA or San Francisco, there's no houses under $2 million. I was just talking to a guy at my hotel who used to live in Compton. They're selling like 2-bedroom apartments for at least $500,000. It's straight out of Compton. It's nothing but millionaires now. Okay, so housing prices are totally unaffordable. You're not wrong about that. Student debt is infinitely worse than it was when I was coming up, let alone when Joe Biden was coming up. You're not wrong about that. You're right about that. Wages proportionally are lower, even though your productivity is sky high. Young people are right about all of those things. And all you ever get back in return is disdain and ridicule from older figures in politics and media. And again, if you're a right-winger and you don't want to deliver for young people or college students, I get it. But if you're a Democrat, you should be in favor of younger voters. Now Joe Biden has gotten to a point where he's losing young voters by 4 points. It is impossible for any Democratic candidate to win the presidency if they are not winning younger voters by a large margin, let alone losing younger voters. He has no chance of winning if he's losing younger voters, and right now he is.
So this will be my last question, then we'll open it up to you guys. So yeah, and you've hit on it, sort of picking up on this Joe Biden thing. So the latest NBC poll, I think it was about a week old now, Trump's beating Biden 46-44. So within the margin of error, but like for a lot of people, they're like, how is it that close? So what's your take on this? How's this happening? What's the reasons that Biden's losing to Trump in this poll, and why is he not doing better? Why is Trump doing so well?
Yeah, so that's actually a two-part question. And I'm going to take some time with it because this is really, really important, guys. So number one, it's not close. Trump is winning easily. There are other polls that have him up 4 points, 5 points. And you think, well, 2 to 5 points, that doesn't sound too easy. No, the Democratic candidate must win by 5 points in order to win the Electoral College. Joe Biden won by 4.5 points in the popular vote in 2020, but he almost lost the Electoral College. He only won by 44,000 votes in 3 swing states. He was this close to losing, even though he won by over 7 million votes. So it's super unfair, but it is what it is. So we can't wish it away. The Democratic candidate, whether it's Biden or anyone else, has to win by 5 to have a decent shot at winning the Electoral College. So if you got a poll of Trump winning by 5 and Biden has to win by 5, oh my God, Biden's down by 10. By 10 to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the single most unpopular politician of our lifetimes. 60% of the country pretty much despises him. And he's losing to him. And he's losing to him by a lot. And so I can give you 1,000 numbers. He's now taken Democrats at a 42-point lead among Latinos. It is now down to 4 points. Democrats have lost 38 points with Latino voters in a short period of time. That was only in 2012 when they were at 42%. Again, a Democratic candidate cannot win if they're only winning Latinos by 4 points. Now Trump has made big inroads into African-American voters. Biden is losing almost every swing state. Biden is down 10 points with independents. Guys, in my whole lifetime of covering politics, which has now been over a quarter century, we've always had a rule that if an incumbent is down under 50 points in approval, they are very, very likely to lose. Biden is down under 40 points. He's at 37 points. I've challenged reporters. No reporter can find me one instance of an incumbent being under 40 points and winning. Literally never happened. And we think Joe Biden is the guy who's going to do it? Joe Biden can't finish his sentences. And so people say, oh, that's very rude. No, you have to be politically correct. You have to, oh, that's ageist, right? No, it is. Look, Bernie's perfectly fine at his age. Trump, unfortunately, I mean, his mind's never been fine, but he's active, he's energetic, etc. Biden goes up there and he's like, oh, there was a concert in Brazil and Taylor Swift or Britney Spears. Oh. That guy's not going to do a 15-point comeback. We all know it. If you're an objective political analyst, no one, look, he's at 37. When he won in 2020, he was at 52. Did you know that? He's 15 points lower than when he barely won. He has almost no chance of winning this election. Barack Obama couldn't come back from this far down. Okay, they say, oh, Barack was around this. No, Barack Obama slipped to about 43 points at the nadir of his presidency. But he didn't live there. He mainly lived around the 50s, okay? And so him winning was easy. Plus, he's Barack Obama, a really talented politician, right? Joe Biden has been living in the low 40s and high 30s for a long time now. And he is not a talented politician. Why did they move South Carolina to the beginning? Because he got his ass handed to him in Iowa and New Hampshire. He's a terrible politician. That guy's going to make a 15-point comeback. Almost no chance of it. So most Democrats have said, okay, I'm good with it. I'm okay with losing to Donald Trump. I'm okay with losing democracy because the dear leader has said that he would like 2 terms instead of 1 term. I bow my head. Well, I don't bow my head. I don't. We're on the Titanic. We're headed straight for the iceberg. What I'm doing here is lunging into the captain's quarters and lunging for the wheel. Turn the ship, because this guy's not going to win. So look, guys, I try to get Democratic governors in this race. Initially, I tried to bring in prominent progressives. I even tried to bring Jon Stewart into the race because I know for a fact Joe Biden's not going to win. Someone else at least has a chance. When none of them would do it, and by the way, to all those governors, they should live in shame. You could have had the presidency. Beating Joe Biden is super easy in a primary, let alone beating Trump, which they would be 10 points higher than Biden. So they weren't profiles in courage. So when all options were gone, I said, well, okay, then I'm going to do it because someone's got to lunge for the wheel. I do not want to lose democracy without even trying. So finally, the second half of the question, why? Why is Biden in such disastrous shape? Number one, real people go into like this week, when you talk to someone that isn't involved in politics, ask them, hey, what do you think of Joe Biden? Literally every single one of you, here, I'm a magician, I'll predict it ahead of time. Every single one of you will get the same answer back. He's too old. In fact, 77% of Americans say that they're worried he will not be able to finish his second term. 3/4 of the country thinks he's going to die in his second term. And we're just whistling past the graveyard like, oh yeah, that's fine. It's not fine. You're not supposed to try to lose elections. You're supposed to try to win elections. So whether it's fair or unfair, everyone thinks he's too old. And he is too old for this job. Sorry, my dad's in his 80s. I love my dad, right? But when you get into the 80s, your memory starts to slip. Your cognitive abilities start to slip. It is intensely selfish for Joe Biden to go, I don't care. I don't care about democracy. I don't care about Democratic voters. I don't care about anything. I want 2 terms. He's a narcissist, almost as big as Donald Trump. An utter narcissist. Okay, so secondly, deliver for people and they will vote for you. It's not that complicated. Paid family leave's at 84%. Why didn't you do it? What do you need it to be at 85%? Why didn't you do it, Joe Biden? You didn't do it because you don't want to do it. Same public option, polls at 70%. First of all, if you can't get something passed when it polls at 70%, retire, become a dentist. If you can't get it passed at 84%, retire, become a plumber. Those are noble professions. But you don't belong in politics if you can't get a bill passed that 84% of Americans want. It's not that he can't get it passed, it's that he doesn't want to pass those bills because his donors have told him, you are not to raise our costs at all. $15 minimum wage. He pretended he was in favor of it. He pretended it was the bare minimum. Then the minute he got into office, the first interview he does is for the Super Bowl. He says, oh, well, that one's not going to pass. So he threw it under the bus himself. That is him signaling to Republicans and Democrats, I'm not in favor of $15 minimum wage. You can kill it right now. And they did. It was the very first thing they took out of the COVID relief bill was $15 minimum wage. Because, look, and here I'm going to say something that media finds outrageous, but in reality, media should be challenging the establishment. They should be challenging the powerful, not being their water carriers. So I'm going to tell you something that they will consider outrageous, and the rest of you will find to be perfectly normal. Joe Biden is a liar. He never even proposed the public option. He said he would do the public option, never proposed it. Paid family leave would pass easily in a single bill, especially when they had both houses of Congress. Could have passed like that. But he never wanted to do it. He never wanted to do $15 minimum wage. All of these politicians work for the people who sign their checks. They work for corporate PACs and lobbyists.
And Joe Biden has been working for them for 50 straight years. When you get into this BS that they have, they're like, oh, he's regular Joe from Scranton. Brother, he hasn't been in Scranton in 80 years. Who are you kidding? He's Joe Biden from Washington, D.C. He's one of the most legendary senators. And why is he legendary, by the way? Did you know what his nickname was in the Senate? He was called the senator from MBNA. That was a credit card company based in Delaware. He was so corrupt that even in the Senate, they were like, he's the senator from a credit card company. That's who Joe Biden is. So when you don't pass bills, you shouldn't be surprised that you wind up at 37%. When you don't do your promises and you don't deliver for African Americans, you lifted the filibuster on the debt ceiling, but you didn't lift it for voting rights. When you don't deliver for the average American, when you don't deliver for younger voters. Here, last one, marijuana. In Washington, whenever you mention marijuana, they're always like, marijuana, who cares? You crazy young people. What's funny about it? Over 70% of Americans want marijuana to be legal because it's not about smoking the joint. It's about don't put people in jail for the equivalent of having a Coors Light. That's not fair. Do you know that black people and white people in this country smoke marijuana at the same rate, but black people are arrested at about 4 times the rate? That's an incredible injustice, and you're laughing at that? So Joe Biden, he could have just descheduled it completely. But he's like, oh, no, we'll move it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 1.5 or whatever. Brother, what does it take for you to do something that the American people want? Over 70% of Americans want it. It passes in ballot measures in red states, in deeply red states. What is it going to take for this dinosaur to do anything that he promised? So that's why he's at 37%, and that's why he's going to lose, and that's why I'm in this race.
All right. So please go up to the mic, go up and ask a question to somebody, and maybe say your name and where you're from, what your major is. And I will start calling on people, so.
By the way, the students I got here earlier asked great questions earlier. So you could ask those questions too, but I love all questions, challenging questions, non-challenging.
Go to the
You know
mic.
what?
Yeah, sure.
Have at it.
Yeah, there you go. So name, where you're from, major, and then your awesome question you're about to ask.
All right, my name is Andrew Baxley. I am the president of the College Democrats here at the College of Charleston. My major is political science and business administration. I'm going to just reiterate the question that I asked in the room so that everybody else can hear. How do you plan to beat Joe Biden? I call them Biden sequel Democrats. They're those Democrats that are set in their way. Man, we're gonna reelect him. How are you going to convince them otherwise? It's evident that you have that charisma, you have that structure, but how are you going to convince those Democrats?
I actually think that it would be relatively easy if, I don't think it's relatively easy overall, okay, if I was allowed on the same stage as him. So, and that could be literal in terms of a debate, but it could also mean, hey, doing town halls on cable news, going on all the podcasts, the shows. It's getting basically a fair hearing. Because when people hear me, again, they might not like it. Some people that are I remember this voter that we interviewed back in 2016 was supporting Hillary Clinton. And we said, why are you supporting Hillary Clinton? And she said, well, because I don't want a revolution. I kind of like the status quo. And I thought, well, that's a super logical answer, right? That's fair. And if you want the status quo, Hillary Clinton was a perfect candidate, right? So if people might hear me out, and some portion of Democratic voters will go, no, I don't want it. It's a paid family leave. It sounds radical. You're going to give moms a day off after they have a baby. No, they should be back on the assembly line, okay? And maybe they carry the baby with them. I don't like it. I don't want it, right? Higher wages, oh, that'll lead to inflation. That could, I don't like it. I work for a giant corporation, et cetera. No problem. But I think the great majority of Democratic voters are going to go, oh my God, there's a Democrat who's willing to fight for us? Wow, we haven't seen that in 40, 50 years. That would be amazing. Like, imagine a Democrat becomes president and you don't have to beg him to do the things that he promised. In fact, you're trying to stop him because he's so aggressively trying to get those bills passed. That's actually a thing that's not only possible, it existed here in America. Lyndon Johnson did it with Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and Medicaid. And obviously FDR did it with Social Security and
and so many other things. Democrats used to be lions. They were the strongest people in the room. We've all gotten used to incredibly weak Democrats. In fact, if a Democrat doesn't whisper, everybody yells at them. They're like, oh, he's being uncivil. I ran for Congress, and the LA Times said that they agreed with almost all of my policies. They literally wrote this down in an op-ed. Agree with almost all my policies, but they said he's too pugilistic, too combative. We prefer a more civil Congress. They wrote that when Donald Trump was president. Well, how's civility working out for us? The Republicans have been running roughshod. No, it's time that you got a fighter who fights for those things. Guys, if I win or Joe Biden wins or anybody else wins, who cares? That's a title and a status for that person. How does it affect you? It doesn't affect you at all. Oh, my team won, so what? The question is, did they pass bills? Because the bills are the things that affect your lives. Everything else is ego. You either pass the bills and it makes your lives materially better, or you don't pass bills and you are useless. And I'll give you one example. Lowering drug prices. Every BS politician comes out and says, oh, I'm going to lower drug prices. Bush said it, and then he's the one that did the deal in the first place that made it so we couldn't lower drug prices. Obama ran an ad about how he was going to lower drug prices and negotiate with pharmaceutical companies, et cetera. He didn't do it. Trump said he was going to do it. He didn't do it, right? Why? They get in there, and they all say it, too. They're like, oh, it's very difficult because of the drug lobby. Wait, break that down. Why? What does the drug lobby do? Do they come and threaten your family? No. They write checks to your colleagues. They aid and abet corrupt. They are the corruption. And then those, not just Republicans, but Democratic senators, Democratic congressmen, then cash those checks, millions of dollars, and then they say, oh, yeah, we couldn't pass the bill to lower drug prices. No. As president, I would out them. I would say, there's a congressperson, and they took $845,000 from drug companies, and now they're threatening to keep drug prices high, artificially high. You should make sure that that congressman never wins again. Oh, Cenk, that sounds civil. Well, how are you going to pass the bills? In order to pass bills, you have to play hardball as well, not exclusively, but as well. So my intent is to work for you, to be your representative, your voice, and fight like hell to pass those bills that make your lives better. Biden said he lowered drug prices. He did it for one drug. There are tens of thousands of drugs. He said, don't worry, another 9 will kick in year 2026. Is this a joke? You're going to negotiate drug prices on 10 drugs out of tens of thousands of drugs? No, what that is it's actually a trick to protect the drug companies. Because then the media comes and goes, historic drug reform, drug prices are lower. No, they're not. They're not lower for 99.999% of drugs. But they did a marketing con job to get you to believe that Biden had done something when he had done the exact opposite. So imagine a Democratic president that fights for you. That's the difference.
And I have one follow-up question for that. As far as like the DNC with, debates and everything, do you think that's going to have like a big effect on your campaign, like not being able to debate him like in front of the American people? And do you agree that as American citizens, we should have the right to see all of our candidates displayed before us debating these policies?
Yeah. So we all knew that the DNC was going to try to protect Joe Biden. But we all knew that he was unlikely to get a debate from anyone who ran against him. Everybody in politics knew that, right? But hold on, let's pause and break that down. Why? Why do you feel a need to protect your candidate? You feel that need because you know your candidate is incredibly weak. And if they were exposed to any kind of challenge, that they would melt. And they're not wrong about that. Picture me in a debate against Joe Biden. He'd have no chance. Everybody knows that, right? So that sounds like it's, you're unbearably arrogant, okay? But wait a minute, guys. You see what I've said today, right? When I challenge him, why didn't you pass these bills? What's he going to say? Oh, well, that's a lot of malarkey. You know, I had their donors and I told them that nothing would fundamentally change. And I got to work with my Republican friends. All right, good. Make the argument. Tell us how great your Republican friends are and how you had to work with them to make sure that none of our priorities got passed. Go ahead. And guys, the thing is, if he was a strong candidate, he could do that. And he would, who am I? Who am I? I'm an online talk show host. You're worried about an online talk show host? You're worried about Dean Phillips, a junior congressman? You're worried about Marianne Williamson? And you're telling me you're going to beat Donald Trump? Oh, come on. No, if I was the incumbent, I'd be like, yeah, come on, bring him up. You know why? And this is really important, guys, because when you go to a debate that is tens of millions of dollars in free media, the Republicans are doing debates over and over, and they're getting the Republican message out. They disagree around the edges, tiny bit, right? But mainly that's not what people are hearing. They're hearing Republican message over and over and over again. And that's why they won in 2016, because they had a really tough contested primary where you heard the Republican message over and over and over again. And the DNC was like, don't get the Democratic message. Don't let Bernie go against Hillary Clinton, because if Bernie's against Hillary Clinton and people see it, they're obviously going to vote for Bernie, and we don't want that. Thank you for confessing, right? And what did they do? They threw away arguably hundreds of millions of dollars in free media, and Trump won. In 2020, they had 27 candidates on the Democratic side, a full, robust primary. And guess what? They won because you got all of that extra free media. So if I was an incumbent, I would love debates. I'd be like, oh, yeah, bring in every Bob, Dick, and Harry, or whatever it is. Come on, let's debate. Because I want to get on that stage, and I want to pound the Democratic message, how we're going to support you guys. We're in favor of the average American. We're going to raise your wages. We're going to lower drug prices. But Biden doesn't want that because he can't even beat us. They know they can't beat us in a debate, and then they're going to tell you that they're going to beat Trump? No, they're not. You don't beat Trump from a bunker. And so, of course we should debate. Of course we should. And my guess is that Biden will hide the entire time, hide in shame, because he knows he can't even beat the three of us in a debate. He can't. But when you get to the general election, you can't hide anymore. Sorry, your hiding strategy is not going to work overall. And number two, it isn't going to work when you're 15 points down. How are you going to make up a 15-point deficit, from where you were last time if you're hiding? So, yeah, show up to a debate. Come and find out, Joe Biden. But he won't.
Question. Let's see. Carmela, you want to come to this mic right here so people can...
So essentially, kind of bring it up, but kind of branch out. So essentially, like, using the adjectives that's describing you is more so extremist, progressive, right? So with that being said, one of the things that we've kind of discussed was this one-side approach, and you being able to be a little bit more direct, being able to, as you stated, you are open-minded, and that's through your party selection, right? So with that being said, I just want to be able to understand in regards to your attitude and how you work well within a team. Because I think with that being said, there seems to be a lot of issues in which you're bringing up within the Democrat Party. And I mean, today, you didn't really discuss too much about the Republicans, but I think it's quite prevalent about the issues. So can you tell us about a high-performing team that you've built, right? And what are the most important principles you'd follow in governing and leading your senior White House team?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me break it down in three different ways. So first of all, they say, well, you're not a politician, so what experience do you have? I started in my living room with no money, no nothing, 21 years ago. No connections. Nobody knew who Cenk is, or as they would have pronounced it, Cenk, right? I had nothing. And from there, we built up one of the largest news networks in the country. We're top 10 on almost every platform. 5 billion views a year. 27 billion views overall, 25 million subscribers. Now, how do you do that? A lot of politicians will say, I'm a self-made man. The senator from Oklahoma said it the other day in hearings. Nonsense. No, I had to build a team because you can't win on your own. It's not possible. The only way to do things that are very, very, very difficult is by finding awesome people and surrounding yourself with them. So I had, not only was our team at Young Turks legendary and heroic, and without all of them being there,
we would have never made it, and I would have never made it, and I wouldn't be here. But also the audience. So the audience would bring in equipment for us to use because they knew we had no money. One day, a guy walks into our studio with a $5,000 switcher, and back then, $5,000 was all the money in the world to us. And he just hands it to us and goes, "You need this so you can switch between cameras." Okay, and we're like, "Oh!" And then we're like, "How do we repay you?" And he just walked out. I don't know his name. So the audience helped us build this. I tried to get him on MSNBC, and this was now a dozen years ago, and they had an open slot at 10 o'clock, and I announced my candidacy for it. My agent left me because he said it was so embarrassing. He said, "That has no chance of working, and all you're going to do is embarrass yourself." Where have I heard that recently? Okay, so what happened? I got the job. How did I get the job? If I had just done it on my own, he would have been right. There's no way. Instead, I went to the audience and I asked them, "Hey, you guys want to be my teammates? You want to do this together?" And they started sending in email after email, picture of them saying, "Put Cenk on MSNBC." They started photoshopping pictures of TYT on MSNBC, Cenk on MSNBC. And it built and built until they got thousands and thousands of emails. And then finally they're like, "All right, come on in for an interview." And I did 2 interviews. I did an on-air hosting. And the minute I did the on-air hosting, I told the entire audience, "Go to MSNBC, watch me." I doubled the regular host ratings. They'd never seen anything like that. Never. When I was at MSNBC, I was the only one to beat Fox News in any demographic. You'll be shocked to find out it was 18 to 34 years old. Of course, I beat them with younger viewers, right? And so nothing is impossible, guys, but you got to build a team. And so I have built these teams together. We built Justice Democrats. Also, what do people say? Impossible. I said, "How many Justice Democrats do you think will get into Congress?" And every reporter I asked either said 0 or 1. I said, "Maybe you'll get lucky somewhere, right? But it'll be 1. There's 11 in now, okay, including one of the largest political upsets in American history when AOC beat Joe Crowley. So nothing is impossible as long as you're not selfish and egotistical and you give credit to other people and you work with other people and you actually try to deliver for them and you build something together. Now, you mentioned in the prelude, though, something I have to address. You said I'm viewed as an extremist progressive. There's some truth to that because of the way the media covers things. But wait a minute. I just told you the proposals that I was in favor of. You can check it out on my site, cenkforamerica.com. You'll see that I put the polling next to the policy so that you know there isn't a single policy that I'm pushing for that polls at under 68%. So is 68% of the country radical extremist progressives? No, they're moderates. The progressive position is the moderate position. The corporate position is the radical extremist position. I can do math. That's a giant advantage I have. 84 to 16 on paid family leave. The 84% is the moderate position. The Joe Manchin, Republican / Joe Biden secretly, 16% position is the radical extremist position. So no, progressives are the great majority of the country. We're 2/3 of the country on almost every single issue. So yes, and one last thing. If you become president and you actually want to pass bills, sometimes you have to cooperate and you got to know when to take a deal. You have to be practical enough to know you got a deal good enough and take it. But you also have to play hardball. And that's the thing that's missing from American politics. You have to be able to say, Chuck Schumer, you're going to propose this bill in the Senate, and I'm not interested in your excuses for why you're not doing it. You're going to put up paid family leave. Otherwise, I'm going to go and use the Bully Pulpit. Bully Pulpit Series, oh yeah. Did Biden ever use the Bully Pulpit? Did he ever come out and say, we're going to pass this bill, and can you believe that this guy isn't in favor of it, or this guy isn't proposing it? No, never. Never. In fact, after Joe Manchin eviscerated 85% of his agenda, in the signing ceremony for the Inflation Reduction Act, he handed Manchin the pen. And he gave him every oil pipeline he wanted. He allowed him to gut his bills because he never used the Bully Pulpit. He never played hardball. Joe Manchin is one of the most corrupt members of Congress we've ever had. He takes $5 million from fossil fuel companies and campaign contributions. He made $5 million in the last 10 years from his own coal company. And he's pushing bills that help his own coal company. If I'm president, I go, listen, Joe, first, you do it right, though. First, you invite Joe Manchin into the Oval Office, and you do it behind the scenes and go, Joe, here's the situation. And I would show him the posters I have with his big face on it, and I'd show him the next poster with all of his donors on it, and go, hey, I'm going to do a press conference after this meeting where I'm going to show people this, and I'm going to show them how corrupt you are, and I'm going to drive your poll numbers down so low you're never going to work in politics again. Or we can make a deal. Okay, and if he says no, I go out and I deliver on that promise, and I pummel Joe Manchin until I end his career. Now, you might say, hey, well, Cenk, then in those 2 years, you might not get the bill passed because you don't have Manchin and you don't have the Republicans. But the minute Manchin and a couple other Democratic congressmen lose after I call them out, all of a sudden, they're going to come around and go, I was always in favor of paid family leave. Did you say higher minimum wage? I love higher minimum wage. That's how politics works. If you're not using hardball, you're not really playing politics. And that is the entirety of the Democratic Party for the last 40, 50 years.
You have a question in the back? Yeah, go ahead. Come on. Tell us your name and major.
Sure, I'm Tyler Clapper. I don't go to school here. I'm part of Charleston DSA's abolition work group. I know we talked about marijuana legalization on a federal level, but I also know you were critical of Newsom's early release and whatever that bill was. So I was asking if you're open to or opposed to early release or immediate release for those falsely incarcerated within legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, great question. People say, see, he asked it in a great way. Most of the time people ask, are you in favor of early release? Wait, doesn't that depend? Who are we releasing? If you say, are you in favor of early release for people who are convicted on marijuana possession? Absolutely. Let him go. Let him go. Get him out of the jails immediately. That's insane. Hey, you know what? I had a Coors Light earlier today. Well, not earlier today, but yesterday. Okay. So should I be in prison for that? No, if I'm in prison, early release, of course, right? But the reason I was critical of Newsom's bill is because there's violent criminals in there. And so when we said criminal justice reform, we didn't mean release the violent criminals. We meant criminal justice reform for justice so that you're not falsely incarcerating people that shouldn't be incarcerated. But if someone hit a woman in the face with a brick, sorry, you got to go to jail, okay? And I don't want your early release. I don't want any of that, okay? Somebody's in prison for a long time, even on a distribution, not a possession, but a distribution. Okay, hey, we can talk about early release. That makes sense, right? There are many, many situations where early release makes sense. But there are plenty of situations where early release doesn't make sense. And it's our job to be able to tell the difference.
Even on good behavior and reform?
Yeah, so again, it totally depends. So if you said, hey, somebody served for 30 years and they've had a great, even if it was for murder, right? But they've been a model prisoner, they rehabilitated, they got a college degree, et cetera. Yeah, sure, of course, right? It depends on the circumstance. But if you say, I'm going to let people who did domestic abuse and murder and rape and child molestation, I'm letting a whole bunch of them go because I want to get credit for an early release. No. So it depends. Yeah.
Got one more for you. You said that most of Biden's poll being down is because of his lack of fulfillment on promises. While that's very much true, I also think, I don't know who we've got in here, but I think it's a lot of the current conflict and the G word.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. You're absolutely right about that, and I should have mentioned that. Yeah, Biden has been terrible on Gaza, and younger voters hate it. And here's what I love about America. It is young Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, and all of the above voters. They're all unified. And when Jewish American, especially younger Jewish Americans, come together and they protest and they say, not in my name, that's the beauty of America. That's why I love this country, okay? So what Joe Biden is saying instead is he was very flippant, and he's like, no way against the ceasefire. He's not in favor of the ceasefire, et cetera. And so what Israel is doing to brutalize Gaza is unacceptable. And I would not send $14 billion over. No way. Those bombs that land on those kids' heads say made in the USA on them. That is eternal shame for us. And to see an ongoing genocide and to fund it, we're funding a genocide? That's insanity. And that's why he's among the reasons why he's lost younger voters, because younger voters can see and they have moral clarity. And so not only that, I wouldn't send another dime to Israel, period, until they end the occupation. So don't tell me you're the top democracy in the region when you imprison 5 million Palestinians in an open-air prison and take away all their rights and oppress them for 56 straight years, and then brutalize Gaza. Jesus Christ. New York Times had a great article that came out yesterday explaining that the percentage of civilians and children and women killed in Gaza by Israel is higher than the percentage of any other conflict in the last 20 years. They killed more civilians than America did in Afghanistan in 20 years. They did it in 2 months. Sorry, this is not a top ally. This is not a democracy, and this is not anything we should be funding. On the other hand, they end the bombing, they end the occupation, then I love Israel. Then yes, sure, send them money, send them whatever they need. Wonderful democracy, happy to have it. But you got to have 2 states, and you have to free the Palestinians. If you don't free the Palestinians, there's no way in the world we should send on another dime. And by the way, is any other politician saying this? Where are they? So, again, Republicans, I get it. Am I super surprised that they're in favor of genocide? I mean, they were in favor of the Iraq War, where hundreds of thousands of civilians died. And they did it with our dime, and Joe Biden voted for it, Hillary Clinton voted for it, John Kerry voted for it, right? But Democrats, now you're going to come back and say, we're going to send them $14 billion to commit further genocide. No, that's insanity. Why don't you vote for a Democrat who's actually a Democrat? Why don't you actually vote for someone who cares about humanity and morality? And right now, every Democrat that has not come out for a ceasefire should hang their head in shame, and history will judge them very harshly.
So maybe one more question. Yeah. So no.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
thank
Yes, thank you. Good. So let this guy. So maybe say your name and your question.
Yeah. I'm Tristan Salina. I'm a freshman at COC. My major is history. I got a question on the, I guess the I guess you could say the dual citizenship within the Senate. There's some politicians that are mostly I guess, dual citizenship with the U.S. and Israel, and they're supporting Israel-aligned, I guess, funding and institutions, stuff like that. What's your opinion on that and the hypocrisy of much in the Senate?
Yeah, the representative who came in the Israeli Defense Forces uniform, that was unacceptable. Look, there's Americans who have served in the IDF, and that's okay. I don't mind that. If they're dual citizens in this and the countries allow it, no problem, right? But wearing a foreign army's military in our Congress, that's crazy. What are you doing? I don't care if it's Canadian Mounties. No, we're America. And by the way, that only fuels more anti-Semitism. It's like an anti-Semitic trope that, hey, they're not really loyal to America. They're loyal to a different country. And this clown walks in with an Israeli military uniform to U.S. Congress that aids and abets that anti-Semitic trope. And then, of course, he later went on to say that we should, kill as many civilians as possible in Gaza. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the essence of what he said. And by the way, that's a position that Hamas agrees with. They say Israeli civilians voted for the Israeli government, so we're allowed to kill the civilians. I don't agree with that. But representatives like that guy, in fact, a couple of them, said we should it's okay to kill the Palestinian civilians because they voted for Hamas 17 years ago. Well, a lot of them weren't even alive when that election happened, but that is the ideology of a terrorist, to say that it's okay to kill citizens because they voted in a certain direction or support a certain government. So, no, they shouldn't come in the uniform. I don't mind if they served in the army. I don't mind if they're dual citizens of whatever country, right? But when you're a U.S. congressperson, you're supposed to represent Americans, your voters, your district, not anyone else.
Great. I have one more question. So I know your nephew is Hassan Piker, right?
Yes.
What's your opinion on him and his communist, I guess, socialist-esque beliefs?
Yeah, so I debate him all the time on that, and I do it on his show. And we used to have a show on the TOT network when he worked with us where I would debate him on a regular basis on those issues. So I call myself a democratic capitalist, and so I know that drives some young voters crazy, even the mention of the word capitalist. But I think that it's been conflated with corporatism, and corporatism is the evil that we live under today, where corporations have not only killed off our ability to thrive as citizens, but they've also killed off the free market and capitalism. So markets exist by nature, and it's a question of how you regulate them. So democratic capitalism and democratic socialism are very similar because we all live in a mixed economy. So people use the word socialism as like a boogeyman, but they never clarify. Are we talking about Venezuela or are we talking about Finland? Because there's tons of socialist countries where people are having lovely strudels as we speak, right? In fact, those are the happiest countries on earth, literally, right? So since we're all a mixed economy, some things are going to be done publicly and some things are going to be done privately. I think jeans and hamburgers are private, but health insurance should be public because, and I explain this in my book, we used to have privatized fire departments. That did not end well. Because if Bob, your neighbor, didn't pay for his fire insurance, they'd let his house burn down. And guess what happened next? Your house would burn down, right? So some things have to be public, and including health insurance. That's what every other developed nation does. We're the only ones that are barbaric enough that live under corporate rule where we say, no, if you didn't have enough money for health insurance, we're going to let your kids die. And I would fix that immediately. But when you get into, hey, people shouldn't own private property, I don't agree with that at all. And that's just not a workable model, and it's not something that Americans are in favor of.
We got to wrap it there, but thank you. And so thank you very much for being here. Let's give Cenk a round of applause. Do you have to head right out, or do you have a second if folks want to say hello?
No, I've got a second.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if you guys want to say hello or get a photo or anything, you can do that. But thank you very much for being here. Stay tuned for more events, and good luck on the campaign.
Thank you, and thank you guys for coming out. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you having an open mind, hearing me out, and I love the questions. Thank you.